Preface. Truth, like gold, is unaffected in quality by its environment, but the environment of truth does affect the character of the person receiving it. Half-truths clothed in obscene language and imparted by the ignorant or vicious have made mental, moral, and physical wrecks of millions. The same truth received from a pure mother, noble father, a good book, or a wise teacher safeguards the youth and accomplishes untold good. The purpose of this book is not only to enable parents, teachers, and all matured people to inform themselves more fully concerning the vital facts of life, but it furnishes a specific guide to all parents who would know how to tell their children the sacred story of life and counsel intelligently with their sons and daughters at the ages of greatest danger and give them clean, concise, and scientific sex instruction with a view to safeguarding them against the demoralizing half-truths of vicious or ignorant schoolmates, servants, or companions, and to all others of sufficient age who have an opportunity for service to innocent and helpless children who would have a wise word at the right time, and to the young man and young woman, married or single, who would avoid the pitfalls lying in the pathway of those ignorant of God's sacred laws of nature, and to all mankind who seek to make the world better by more intelligent and better living. The author of this book is sacrificing home life, financial interests, and much that is dear to all human hearts to humanity's cause. He lectures by day and works and travels by night and is unable to meet half of the calls for service. During engagements of 2 or 3 days, he labors at night, without money and without price, in private interviews with young men after his lectures until midnight, 1, 2, 3, and 4 o'clock in the morning, hoping thereby to lend a helping hand to thousands to the end of nobler, purer, and better living. In this work, he has met with marvelous success. He now hopes to send his vital messages to the 4 corners of the earth in book form, in order that the influence of his work may be felt in wider circles than he may ever hope to reach in personal endeavors. The spirit in which this book has been written is best expressed in the words of Henry Van Dyke. There is a loftier ambition than merely to stand high in the world. It is to stoop down and lift mankind a little higher. There is a nobler character than that which is merely incorruptible. It is the character which acts as an antidote and preventive of corruption, fearlessly to speak the words which bear witness to righteousness and truth and purity, patiently to do the deeds which strengthen virtue and kindle hope in your fellow men, generously to lend a hand to those who are trying to climb upward, faithfully to give your support and your personal help to the efforts which are making to elevate and purify the social life of the world. Professor Shannon observes that the spirit of society and the attitude of our government has been to protect our forests, inspect our swine, and neglect our children, but that a wiser and more hopeful day is dawning. More interest in the study and application of the laws of heredity has been taken in the past 10 years than in the previous 90. Newspapers and magazines contain articles by leaders of eugenic thought. Purity organizations are springing up throughout the country and sounding the word of warning against the prevailing ignorance of these subjects. Books are being written, sermons and lectures delivered, and the masses are becoming interested. In this, Professor Shannon is doing his part. The sale of his books to date have reached in excess of 250,000 copies with no organized effort behind them. Each copy sold seems to sell 2 others, and with the business growing by leaps and bounds and getting beyond his control, the present publishers with a sales system unexcelled were selected as a medium for placing his messages literally into the homes of millions. Professor Shannon is a member of the advisory board of the World's Purity Federation and lectures under the auspices of this movement. 8 years as teacher of biology, after his graduation from college, his experience in writing 8 other purity books, and years of research and lecturing on these subjects have eminently qualified him for the high position he holds today with the World's Purity Federation, and is author of a number of books on moral, social, and reform topics, which are today meeting with such an enormous sale. He sends forth this volume on its mission of usefulness to the human race with the implicit faith that it will be the means of safeguarding the youth wherever it goes and make thousands of homes happier and brighter and the world a better place to live. The publishers. Introduction. The saddest thing in all this world is a human wreck, a man or a woman, young or old, who is undone and who, in one or more walks of life, is a failure. There are so many of them. Mental wrecks, physical wrecks, nervous wrecks, social wrecks, business wrecks, character wrecks. The aspect of these derelicts is the more pitiable because of the possibilities before every well-born human being, with the endowment of intelligence and other gifts and powers bestowed upon him by a kind Creator, is capable of rising to heights of human perfection. Ample provision made for man's every need and want by God, and yet we find misery where there ought to be happiness, poverty where there ought to be riches, darkness where there ought to be light, ignorance where there ought to be knowledge, vice where there ought to be virtue, and turmoil and strife where there ought to be peace. Only too accurately do the poet's words apply. Of all the sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these: it might have been. This problem of human wreckage becomes more depressing when we consider that in the breast of every person there is an innate desire to live true, to win success. The daydreams of every boy and girl picture themselves as the hero or the heroine in the story, which weaves into its plot their ideal men and women. Their ideals may be low. That is the fault of their environment and training, but their ideals always represent their own highest conceptions of manhood and womanhood. But sooner or later struggle comes, appetite craves, and passion cries out, and if they are unprepared for life's real conflict, they go down, and another failure is recorded and another wreck left to float and endanger every other craft upon life's seas. Until human wreckage is becoming so enormous that it is a question in the minds of scientists and sociologists as to how long humanity can keep up its present pace and survive the centuries. The causes of human wrecks are many, far too many to be tabulated or enumerated. In a sentence, they result from a principle that it is easier to coast than to climb, so much easier to float than to struggle against the current. Like the weeds that kill out the crops, just so is humanity beset by innumerable temptations at every turn. Social and economic customs force downward a great many who would otherwise rise to higher things. And it is suspected that in the very nature of man, there is a strong tendency to evil, which can be overcome only by divine grace. Appetite and passion are the two forces to which man's higher aspirations most often give way. Intemperance and impurity, in their broader meaning, are the two bars upon which most human wrecks have stranded. Social impurity, or the abuse of the sex function in nature, is by far the most insidious, and with respect to the number and degradation of its victims, the greatest evil in the world today. This book is one of the most valuable ever written because it treats fully and wisely this question of personal and social purity. It points out the reefs, the bars, the snags, the icebergs, the shallow and dangerous places where human wrecks are made. It guides those who accept it as their pilot into the deep waters of an unobstructed channel where the voyage of life will be ever safe, successful, glorious. Here will be found an incentive to climb rather than to coast, an inspiration to struggle even against the current, if in the struggle may be won some of the more valuable prizes of life. Here is a book that holds high the single standard of morality and demands that men shall be as pure as women. It stands boldly for the education of the young and sex hygiene and proclaims a truth that ought long ago to have been universally known, that it is the right of every person to know every knowable fact pertaining to themselves, and that such knowledge ought to be imparted to them before the lack of it has brought injury to their lives. This is a book that will help to forever banish that false modesty and prurient thinking which has made the tremendous growth of public vice a reality, until every girl is in danger of enslavement and every boy threatened with its corruption. This is not a pioneer book on these questions. Other most excellent works have preceded it, for which we should all be grateful, and have paved the way for this latest volume. The excellence of this work consists largely in its completeness. It is a book for the home, for every home, and for every member of the home. It tells exactly what ought to be known concerning the sex nature and life of the individual and the normal relations of the family and society, And best of all, it teaches parents how to impart this saving knowledge to their children. Any and every home that takes this book as a friend and counselor and faithfully studies its pages will fortify every person within the portals of that home against the baneful influences of impurity and vice. The writer has known Professor T. W. Shannon, the talented author of this book, for some years, and we have watched his efforts with interest and admiration. A voluminous writer, a wide traveler, he has probably reached more people with his uplifting message of purity through his books and upon the platform than any other living man of the same age. His methods are never sensational, and he does not stoop to uncovering all the cesspools of sin and vice, but he leads people upward by directing their minds and hearts to the beauty and rewards of pure living and right thinking. Through the strength of his personality and the profound truth in his message, he has helped thousands of college students and other young men to avoid the pitfalls which have brought disaster to so many young lives. By education and experience, Professor Shannon is eminently fitted to prepare just such a book as this, and his authorship should at once entitle it to a high place among the standard works of the day dealing with these problems. As the volume has received my own endorsement, even so I trust it may be most cordially received into the homes of America, that our sons and our daughters may be fortified through the truth, presented in an attractive and safe and sane manner, against the temptations which constantly meet them. The human wrecks may be fewer, and that every life may have a fair chance to attain all for which it was created. B.S. Steadwell, La Crosse, Wisconsin, December 18, 1912.